Okay, so let's come back to global governance. So if this is real, then we should be very concerned and we should be cooperating with the government in doing what we can to reduce carbon and changing our society accordingly. But some activists claim that it's all a con, a hoax, and a scare tactic similar to the COVID, to frighten people into submission and make them accept emergency measures they impose to save the world. There was a leaked memo in the Telegraph in March which said how Matt Hancock had told aides that he wanted to frighten the pants off everyone to make sure they stuck to the COVID rules. Now they're using scare tactics to make people demand and submit to what happens to society as a result of net zero. And the message is being sent out by the UN, by governments, by media, by the education system, that humanity is threatened by this catastrophic global warming. Therefore, we need to change the way we live by cutting down or cutting out the use of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, especially to create electricity and transport systems. And they're also saying that because of this, we need to have some kind of way in which an overarching global government can take control over what takes place in nations. The UN Secretary General Guterres told the UN General Assembly in 2021 that the world is facing a perfect storm of simultaneous crises, including the pandemic and climate change. It needs what he called multilateralism with teeth. This means global governance bodies would claim binding legal authority of over what they called public goods, global public goods, which by they mean the environment. They take power from national governments to itself. He proposed a common agenda with centralized planning at global level. And this is, if you're familiar with it, works out to something called Agenda 21 and Agenda 30, in which the UN takes control over all of your assets and tells you what to do with them. Klaus Schwab, who runs the World Economic Forum, he said the world needs a great reset to work for a global solution to deal with global problems. This will only come about through effective global governance. He made a connection between the COVID crisis and the Green New Deal and climate change. He said at first glance, the pandemic and the environment might seem to be only distantly related cousins, but they're much closer and more intertwined than we think. And one of the connections between both issues is that they want to make people afraid of something that's going to destroy their lives unless global governance steps in and saves us. This will result in a reduced population, which submits to the control of a powerful and wealthy group of people who dictate a new world order. In the process, you'll find that free speech, democracy, human rights will disappear in a dictatorial system backed by an all-seeing technology taking control of our homes, our money, our thoughts, and our social lives. Next year, the UN is planning a conference. It's called the Summit of the Future. This summit, international bureaucrats who make up the UN are expected to adopt what's called a pact for the future. According to Guterres, this will plan for a standing authority for the UN to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform. They'll create an emergency and then they'll say that we have to take over your country and the world actually to resolve this problem. In other words, the UN will be given unprecedented authority over public and private areas and swathes of the world, all in the name of battling an yet unknown crisis. So this week, the fact that Mr. Guterres spoke about the earth boiling and the need for a unified world response is preparing the way for this to be done in the name of saving the world from climate change. Can you see the danger there? I'm not exaggerating, this is all documented, and I can give you evidence for this. Now, the Gatestone Institute, which is quite a good organization which exposes some of this, says that the World Economic Forum is already making plans to use the climate change, zero carbon issue to determine how much energy people use, what food they eat, all to be monitored by AI technology. They're looking at the construction of smart cities or 15-minute cities in which millions of people can be relocated, live side by side in small apartment complexes and move through a constant maze of entrances and exits, accessed solely through digital ID verification and approval. It's the way towards the global control system. There's also an organisation called the Future of Urban Consumption, or C40, which produced a paper called The Future of Urban Consumption in a 1.5C world, which is a global network of mayors representing a quarter of the global economy. It includes 100 cities, including London, plus 1,143 cities and local governments that have joined the C40's Cities Race to Zero. They're calling for all cities in this network to be built up so that they can move this towards net zero. According to Mark Watts, the executive director of C40, mayors have an even bigger role and opportunity to help avert climate emergency than previously thought. While the analysis addresses big global questions, its purpose is to inspire practical action. Average consumption-based emissions in C40 cities must halve within the next 10 years. In our wealthiest and highest consuming cities, this means a reduction of 2/3 or more by 2030. So London is certainly one of the wealthier cities, and that would mean a reduction of 2/3 of carbon emissions in London by 2030. And this is going to, the mayor is going to be tasked with doing this.